This is lesson 10, the quick start to the color page. The first thing we want to do is load our project. Now we are going to use what is called a DaVinci Resolve archive. Now an archive is a self-contained project that includes all of the media. So all you have to do is restore the archive and the project will be available with all of the media already linked. So let's go into our project manager, and I'm right-clicking and restoring a project archive. Navigate to that archive. Okay, lesson 10. And this archive is called Citizen Chain Cyclery.dra. So DRA stands for the DaVinci Resolve archive. Now open that up, and there it is. So we'll open up that project and let's look in these folders. Now we don't actually need to relink media because the DaVinci Resolve archive, again, contains all of the media that it needs and the project file. So if I go into my Finder, lesson media, if you go into 10, if you go into the folder of the archive, there's a project, which is the project, and then the media files. So an archive is a great way of consolidating the entire project because it not only keeps your project file, it brings in all of the media that you used for that specific project. Okay. We click on the edit page, we have an edit, I'll shift Z. And we can get into the color page directly by clicking on color page tab. And that's it. And we're in the color page. Let me reset my UI layout, and I'll go into the full screen mode. Again, at the top, we've got our interface toolbar. You click to show hide different parts of your interface. You have your gallery. This is where you can store stills and power grades. And we'll talk about that at later lessons. Here's your viewer to see your actual clip. The node graph, this is where you can see all the different corrections that you've done. Below that is the timeline of clips. So this is the thumbnail view of all the clips. You click on each clip here, and it will navigate you to the next clip. Below that is a rough timeline. And then at the bottom, depending on your screen resolution, this may look a little different, but this is your color correction controls. And over here to the side, you've got scopes, a keyframe editor, and information about the clip itself. Below each clip in your clip view is information about the codec. If you double click on that information, right now it says all these clips are Apple ProRes 422 proxy. If you double click on that, it'll show you the clip name. Double click it on again. We'll show you which versions. Okay. So that's a general overview of the interface. Let's jump into our color wheels, and we'll talk about the primary controls. So using the primary corrector, you can achieve a refined result because you can divide the image into tonal regions. Here it's divided up into lift, gamma, and gain controls, which correspond to the dark, the mid-range, and the bright regions of your image. And then inside of each region, you can adjust the hue and the luma values. For instance, if you wanted to adjust color or brightness in the dark areas, we would move the lift region. So in clip 11, let's drag the color balance slightly towards the blue, and we'll add some blue to the darker parts of our image. So a slight adjustment can do a lot here. All right, so we've added some blue into this part of the image. So let's drag the lift wheel to the right until our Y luminance reads about 0.05. Clicking and dragging this to the right, so it'll read 0.05. Okay, there you can really see that blue in our lift part of the region. Let's add some warmth into the gain, the brighter parts of our image. So let's pull this towards the orange a little bit, and you can start to see the warmth going into the brighter parts of it. Okay, that's good. And let's drag the master wheel to the right so it displays about 1.3 on the Y. So you can see that the gain master wheel controls the brighter parts of the image. And then in the gamma, let's pull that towards magenta, which is up here in the top right. And let's drag the the gamma luminance to negative 0.03 or something like that. Okay. So we've done adjustments to our image. Let's take a look at a before and after. We'll go up into our menu and view, and we can bypass all grades. Which is also seen in this button right here. Okay. This isn't really what we wanted to do. I just wanted to do this so you can get a feel of what these controls can do. So if you wanted to go back and undo some of the stuff that we've done, if you go to the top right of each panel, there's this reset button. If you click that here, you can reset each parameter, or you can go to the top right, and this is a master reset, and it resets the entire palette. And now we are fully reset. Now if you, let's say we did an adjustment, warm and some tonal ranges. I'm just going to do some random adjustments. But you wanted to reset one of the parameters, not both color and tonal. You can double click here to reset the color. So let's jump into clip number 3, and what we'll do here is show some of the other primary controls. So let's adjust the contrast in this. So we'll, at the very bottom of our color wheels, there are additional primary corrector controls. We've got contrast, pivot, saturation, hue, luminance mix, and let's adjust the contrast of our image. Let's drag it to the right till we've got about 1.2 or so. And then let's click on the second page. Now again, depending on your screen resolution, you will see the full words. Since I have a lower resolution, it shortens it. So this is temperature, tint, midtone detail, color boost, shadows, and highlights. So let's go to color boost, and we'll increase the color boost. And we'll do it to, let's say, this range, around 30. So the color boost increases unsaturated colors more than the saturated colors. So this is good for giving a boost to skin tones without boosting already very saturated colors. Now let's drag our shadows controls here to the right to increase the shadows. So we can see a little bit deeper into the shadows. And this looks good. And then we'll jump into the mid-tone detail controls, and we'll drag that, increase it a little bit. Now what this does is increases the sharpness of the mid-range. Next thing we're going to do is do some white balance adjustments. So let's jump to clip number 2, the Golden Gate Bridge. And at the bottom, and we're at page 2, we're still in the primary correctors, there's this temperature slider. And it's real simple. It brings things cooler. If you drag it to the left, drag it to the right, it'll warm up your image. So let's So let's warm it up just a little bit so we can, there we go. We can bypass this grade again, Shift D, or this, and bypass it. Another one, you can bypass a node by disabling or enabling the Command D. Turn off a node. So the color page uses nodes for multiple color corrections. And so instead of stacking these corrections and effects like layers, you can add as many color correctors and filter effects as you like using these nodes. You can view the nodes as a color correction flowchart for an individual clip. The clip, or the input, starts here at the left. Then it flows through each node, this bar here, and it ends with the image output on this side. So each node can contain multiple different types of corrections, primaries or secondaries, or resizing, things like that. So all the stuff we did before were just using one node. As we move forward, we can create a little more complex corrections using multiple nodes and connecting them in different ways. Secondary color corrections are more specific color corrections. Now, primary corrections are corrections that affect the entire image as a whole. So this affects all of the gamma. This correction here, or this hue correction here with the gank, affects the entire image. Now, secondary color corrections isolate only parts of an image to make very specific changes to a particular image area. So for example, you turn everything black and white except for one object. So let's do a secondary color correction to something that's much more common. Let's get back to our third clip here. And we'll use a secondary to bring down the saturation of this blue pole. So let's add a new serial node. Go to color and then nodes, and then we'll add a serial node. And let's jump into our curves. We'll do custom curve here. We'll jump into the hue versus saturation. Let's rename this node. We'll right click and node label. We'll call it blue pole. Now that we've renamed our node, let's jump into our curve controls to modify the color of that blue pole. Click here at the custom tab at the drop down, and let's change it to hue versus sat. You can see all these other different types of curves. We'll choose the hue versus sat. What this allows us to do is choose a specific hue and adjust the saturation of that hue. So we want to click and choose this area here at the blue pole, and when we do that, we clicked and it gave us these control points here. This indicates the range of blue, and this control point, we can click it up and down to increase or decrease that saturation. I'll pull this pretty far down. And look, we've definitely adjusted that saturation right there. With the node selected, with the blue pole node selected, you can enable or disable that node to see with Command D the before and after. And we'll play. Okay, that works. Okay, so let's move on to resolve effects. Let's jump over to clip number 7 here, of him riding his bike. Let's do a quick contrast adjustment. Okay, and we will warm up a bit of the mid-range. Okay, so we have some sort of correction here. The next thing we want to do is we'll use resolve and some of the resolve effects to blur out this logo right here. So we'll add another node. I'm going to use a shortcut, which is Option S, to add a serial node. And I'm going to create a power window. So click on the power window palette. And because this shape is a circle, we'll use this circular power window. Let's click on it and bring up the power window viewer here. And I'll adjust the control point so it fits directly over the patch. I'm going to zoom in also. We'll do 200 and okay. So I'm not going to do this perfect here. Next, I'm going to choose the effect that I want to use. We'll do Open Effects. And Resolve includes a lot of different resolve effects that you can use in your project. Some of them are free, or in the free version, and some of them are paid in the studio-only version. Now, let's go into Mosaic Blur. You'll see this very often. I'll click and drag this on top of that node, and it's created something there. I'll do pixel frequency right there, something like that. Now you can jump out and we've blurred out the logo. Now if we play it, however, we can see that that window just sticks onto that actual frame but doesn't move with his arm. So what we need to do is go into the tracking panel, which is right next to the power window panel. So we'll go to the tracker. Now Resolve includes a very powerful tracker. This is one of the coolest features that you have in Resolve. So what the tracker will do is look inside the window and track it throughout the image as long as it can see it. So since I'm at the beginning of my clip, I'm going to track forward. And great, and it stays on that image. So let's play. Okay. So it looks like it tracked through that whole rest of that clip. That's great. And let's turn this power window off so that we can see how it worked. All right, that worked perfectly. And the last thing in this chapter is stabilizing a clip. So we just used the tracker, and the tracking is the process of analyzing motion in a clip and then using that motion analysis to follow an element in the frame. Now, we can also use that to calculate the camera motion in a clip. So if we click on this window drop down, we'll go to Stabilizer. We'll jump to this number 10 clip, this parking here. Let's take a look at it. Now, let's say we want to actually lock the camera, so we don't want any panning in the shot. We want to just lock it so it's a static camera. We can use the stabilizer to analyze the motion and change it. So it's analyzing the motion there, So it stabilized the move, but what we want to do is camera lock. Enable this camera lock. And let's hit stabilize again. And what it does is locks down the camera. And with doing so, it actually automatically zooms in on the image for you with the zoom enabled. But I'll turn it off so you can see what it's actually doing. It's moving part of our image here because it's panning, so it's keeping everything in that same frame. So when we turn the zoom back on, you can see that it's zoomed so that we don't see any of those black edges. Okay. So this quick start lesson was only a brief overview of how you can use the controls in the color page. And in the later lessons, we'll dive deeper through all the different parts of it. So we'll learn more about primary, secondaries, and copying and saving these looks using the gallery and creating LUTs.